Huge news. On December 10th, Microsoft's board of directors will be voting on whether they will add Bitcoin to their balance sheet or not. MicroStrategy has outperformed Microsoft by 313%. Institutions and corporations are adopting Bitcoin at a rapid pace, and their second largest shareholder, BlackRock, now has a Bitcoin ETF, one of the best performing ETFs of all time. Even still, their board recommends against adopting Bitcoin. How stupid could they be? Today, we're going to be diving into this landmark proposal, how this could make Microsoft the most valuable company in the world, and what the future trajectory of Bitcoin corporate adoption could look like in 2025 and beyond. Let's go. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Dante Cook, and welcome to Bitcoin Simply, where I help you to understand macro and markets in a simple way. We produce content 6 days a week on this channel, and subscribe if you already haven't. Today's news is huge, so let's get into it. Since August of 2020, Bitcoin has outperformed 99% of the S&P 500 companies. And you know who has outperformed all of the S&P 500 companies? MicroStrategy. They've returned over 1,600% to shareholders, even outpacing NVIDIA by over 500%. And so far, they've outperformed Microsoft by 313% this year alone. And this has caught the attention of their board, and obviously so. On December 10th, their board is going to have an opportunity to vote on whether or not they should adopt Bitcoin into their strategy. It's proposal number 5, in between risk of weapons development, using machine and AI learning for oil and gas production, and data operations in human rights hotspots. I thought Microsoft was a tech company. Michael Saylor tweeted to Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, this morning, "If you want to add $1 trillion of market cap for your shareholders, give me a call." He made this same proposal to Elon Musk in December of 2023, when he said that he would share his strategy for how to buy billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin for Elon. Guess he missed out, even though their stock is doing pretty well right now. The National Center for Public Policy Research presented this proposal to Microsoft. And although everybody has been talking about the MicroStrategy piece and the BlackRock piece, which we'll get to a little bit later, there are some meaty things in this proposal that I think are pretty interesting facts of why all corporations should hold Bitcoin. Point number 1, companies have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize profits for shareholders. Point number 2, CPI is absolutely corrupt. They call it a poor and corrupt measure of what's actually happening in the world, citing that although CPI is stated to have increased by about 5% over the last 4 years, they believe that that number is way off. And I would agree with them. If you are not outpacing the rate of inflation, then you are getting poor in real terms. And with the majority of Microsoft's $484 billion worth of assets being invested in corporate bonds and treasuries, they're getting poorer, or they're making their shareholders poor. And as a point of reference, Bitcoin has outperformed corporate bonds by 411% over the last 4 years. Let's dive into a few other examples of other companies who have adopted a Bitcoin strategy and how that's worked out for them. Metaplanet. What Dylan LeClaire and the Metaplanet team have done this year has been nothing short of amazing. And since they've adopted a Bitcoin strategy in April of this year, their stock is up over 465%. Their Bitcoin holdings are worth about $58 million, and their cost basis is at $52 million with an average price of about $61K per Bitcoin. They will continue to adopt the Bitcoin yield strategy. They measure their Bitcoin yield as the amount of Bitcoin they own to the number of fully diluted outstanding shares they have in the company. And so far, their Bitcoin yield continues to rise. Another company like MicroStrategy, which was a corporate zombie stock, as Michael Saylor pointed out, was Similar Scientific. And even though Bitcoin has been flat since they've adopted it in June of this year, their stock is up over 18%. They now own over 1,000 Bitcoin and plan to make more announcements about their Bitcoin strategy at their next earnings release on November 4th. And this is just a few companies. There are 52 publicly traded companies that own Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And the amount of Bitcoin that they're stacking continues to rise every day. In the recent River report about Bitcoin adoption among corporations, the amount of Bitcoin that corporations are stacking over time is increasing sharply. And it's due to a number of different factors. Number 1, fair value accounting treatment. Number 2, Bitcoin isn't a little asset anymore. It's worth over $1 trillion, about $1.3 trillion to be exact. Hedge funds and big institutions are now adopting Bitcoin, as 47% of traditional hedge funds now own Bitcoin, and 15 of the top 25 largest hedge funds in the world now have exposure, primarily through Bitcoin ETFs. And so the question remains, will Microsoft Despite all of these signs that they should adopt the Bitcoin strategy, will they do it? The Bitcoin ace in the hole is our guy, Larry Fink. BlackRock owns about 7.5% of the overall shares of Microsoft. And now Microsoft has an opportunity to invest into Bitcoin through BlackRock's ETF, which is far and away the fastest growing and best performing Wall Street asset of all time so far. Over the last 4 years, there have been over 1,800 ETFs that have dropped. And according to Eric Balchunas, none even come close to the $26 billion in year-to-date flows of BlackRock. It's in third place overall this year for all ETFs, not just Bitcoin ETFs. And BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world. So they have a lot to say of not only what Microsoft does, but of a lot of different corporations. They manage the retirement accounts of over 40 million Americans, along with some of the other big names like State Street and Vanguard, which you see on this chart. Ian Carroll, in his latest podcast with Robert Breedlove, shares why this is so dangerous.
We have wound up with these fund managers introducing these various types of funds that they can sell to us on these premises of safer investing. We'll handle your money for you so it's distributed, so you won't be vulnerable to market crashes. You won't mess your own stuff. Like great selling points that are valid points. But what they don't talk about, and what these debunks of the BlackRock kind of conspiracy theory don't talk about, is that, yeah, they're managing our money and it's still our money. And like, that's great. Technically, that is kind of our ownership that they're representing. And they don't technically own Procter & Gamble. But all of the shares that they're buying with our money all represent votes. And it's a super easy Google search that anyone can do right now. You can do it for index funds, mutual funds, and exchange traded funds. In an index fund, who manages the share voting rights? And the answer is not you. The manager of the fund is generally in charge of managing the share voting rights, and only in some funds, and only if you explicitly go through the filling out of special forms, submission of these special forms, can you request to manage your own voting rights. And then you're stuck with managing, like, you have one share of the SPY. Now you have to decide how to vote, 1/500th of 1/503rd of a share of 503 different companies, like, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's like the job of managing all those voting rights is monumental if you're going to be diversified in that way. And so no one's doing it, and they're just doing it for us. And when they're managing all of our voting rights of all $40 trillion of our retirement capital, plus all the other capital we're throwing into these ETFs just for fun. Basically, when you look at the share ownership sheets of all of the corporations in America and you see BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street at the top, almost all of that percentage of ownership, which is like 30% of the total market value almost, all of that is representing our money and what would be our voting power. But because they are managing the voting power, they have usurped our right to lead the direction of our capitalistic system.
In the case of people who own actual Bitcoin, real Bitcoin, I believe that Larry Fink and BlackRock orange pilling Microsoft is a good thing because it poses no risk to people who own the real thing. We get the benefit of assets and capital flowing into Bitcoin without any of the downside of a 6102 attack or a takeover. We get number go up and freedom go up, but you only get those things if you actually self-custody Bitcoin and own the real thing. If you're not confident in how to do this, I recommend that you go and schedule a free consultation with the team at thebitcoinway.com. They have one-on-one cybersecurity, privacy, and self-custody experts that will help you along your journey so that you can get both number go up technology with companies like Microsoft pouring into Bitcoin and freedom go up technology that prevents you from having confiscation happening and you taking control over your wealth and your financial future. Don't try to master these skills on your own. Get a coach at thebitcoinway.com. Here's my quick thought on this. Do I think that BlackRock is going to persuade Microsoft to buy Bitcoin at their December 10 meeting? I don't. But more corporations will pour into Bitcoin. And this sort of exposure is only good for Bitcoin. It's going to introduce more companies and more boardrooms to this asset class. If it's a proposal for Microsoft, it's going to be a proposal for tons of other publicly traded companies. Who would have thought that shadowy supercoders like Satoshi Nakamoto would have Bitcoin being talked about in boardrooms like Microsoft's, or that he would have a statue put up like he does in the city of Lugano? Hal Finney wrote in January of 2009 his future price prediction of Bitcoin being at $10 million a coin. He said that if just a small percentage of the total wealth that was in $300 trillion worth of assets flowed into Bitcoin, that would push Bitcoin's price to $10 million a coin. It might make sense to get some in case it catches on. If enough people think the same way, this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What's going to happen if Microsoft starts to think like MicroStrategy? Will we see $1 million Bitcoin faster than we originally thought? I'd love to hear what you think, because MicroStrategy was a dying in corporate zombie stock that is now the 208th largest US company in the world by market cap. Truly extraordinary. So the difference between Microsoft and MicroStrategy is that MicroStrategy owns Bitcoin. That's their ace in the hole. That is the most advanced technological development that we have. And it's something that they didn't build, but it's something that they can leverage. What's going to happen when more corporations do this? It's inevitable, and it's only a matter of time. If you want to discuss more topics like this, I suggest that you head over to joincolumbus.com, the only online Bitcoin digital community for us to discuss topics like these and the future adoption of Bitcoin. And with that, I'm Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.